Hey, what's going on to all my MCU Loki fans out there? Elliot back again from Movie Files, discussing, breaking down, recapping the latest episode of Disney Plus Loki, episode 2, which we have so much to break down, and that ending has huge ramifications for the MCU moving forward. We're breaking it all down here in this spoiler review, but before we dive into it, make sure you all are following me on all my other social media accounts. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you enjoyed this review, it would mean a lot to me if you all can like the video, share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate all the support in the comments. Let's talk about this episode. I mean, this episode was fantastic from top to bottom. The pacing, the character arcs, the reveals, the theories that Loki has, the trickery that Loki has. Spoiler, Lady Loki's in the mix. And again, the ending of those bombs going into the different multiverse is huge. And we're going to talk about that scene. I love this episode, but I want to know what you all thought about it. Again, pros, cons, thoughts, theories. Let's discuss it in the comments. So can't forget to mention that tomorrow, Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time, we will be back discussing this episode live. Myself, Amanda, Chris, and our special guest Brandon from Just My Opinion. Hit that bell notification. We will be going live discussing this episode more in depth tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of this review. As I just said, I love this episode. I really enjoyed episode 1. You can check out my full thoughts on it. It was a great way to give us this exposition of who the TVA are, the timekeepers, and all that stuff. Loki getting this new purpose, a glorious purpose of life, and just going into this episode. This episode, which by the way, I'm pre-recording this a week ahead of the actual premiere, so it doesn't have a title quite yet. If I were to guess, Kablooie, is that going to be the name of the second title, or Lady Loki, or Trust Me? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they name this episode, but this episode was great. Again, I love the chemistry between Owen Wilson as Mobius and Tom Hiddleston obviously as Loki. Their whole back and forth is fantastic. The ending, I just can't get over how they ended this episode, and I think it's going to play so big into Spider-Man No Way Home with Doctor Strange into the multiverse madness. And I just think the ending was just so huge, and I think there's some trusting that we are being led to believe in the TVA and the timekeepers, but I think there might be some alternative motives that we'll talk about in this breakdown. But I love this episode from top to bottom. I think this is what we can expect to see for the episodes ahead and for the rest of the season. This episode was great, but let's get into this recap here. As the episode opens up in 1985 in Wisconsin, we're seeing that there's this type of festival going on. We see the time that variant authorities making their way there because they have some remnants of this variant Loki, who we'll talk about Lady Loki at the end of this review here. But they are in there. We see that one of the head leaders, I believe their name was Hunter C20, played by Sasha Lane, who I'm a big fan of her as an actress. Again, Marvel and the casting is just absolutely perfect, and I hope she has more to do in the rest of the show, because she's such a great actress. But we see she gets her mind wiped. We see more of the powers of Loki, and particularly Lady Loki, but also we're going to get more powers from Tom Hiddleston as Loki. But it just shows you the capabilities of, again, I don't know if the films have really played into the God of Mischief, and they really haven't showed you all the magical powers that Loki possesses, which they hint at in this episode as Loki's explaining to the Minutemen what he's capable of. But I love that we're going to be exploring more of the God of Mischief with this Loki taking over the mind of this Hunter, and then we see her wipe out her whole team and ultimately be taken captive by Lady Loki. But again, I cannot wait to explore more of what Loki and multiple versions of Loki are capable of doing. But speaking of Loki, let's talk about our Loki in his new role being, he took the job offer in this new purpose, this glorious purpose of life, working as a Minuteman, working for the TVA. He's getting the kind of guidelines, kind of his training by Miss Minutes, who, again, I said in my week 1 review, she will be the most popular character by the end of the show. I think Mobius and obviously Loki, but I'm telling you all, Miss Minute will be Funko Pop galores, costume galores. Is going to be the talk about character, I think, by the end of this show. But she's giving Loki the rundown. He's playing with her and all this stuff, but nonetheless, he is ready for action as we see the different variations of Loki. They come in big sizes, small sizes, different designs, but they're all show a female Loki out there. They don't know that it's out there, but we obviously get that at the end of the episode. But I love, again, the show is tackling how Loki has caused the TVA a lot of headaches, and it makes so much sense. This is why I love the concept of the show when they announced that Loki was coming back, because, again, as I said previously in my other review, when you take a chaotic trickery, God of Mischief, and throw them into this kind of group of people that have their rules and guidelines, he's going to muck it up. So I love this combination of water and fire, water being the, what the TVA is, and then fire obviously being Loki. So I love how they mix this character into the whole conversation. And again, the whole motive behind Loki helping the TVA out is he believes, based on Mobius telling him, that I'm going to give you maybe some one-on-one time with the Timekeepers, who he hasn't even met. Again, he's working Loki to get what he wants. So they're both kind of playing each other, which is the classic buddy cop type of trope, which I love. But again, I love that Loki, he's thinking that he's going to get this time to talk to the TVA and talk to, I should say, the Timekeepers, and maybe manipulate them, as Loki thinks he can always do. But again, I'll talk about the Timekeepers here and their alternative motives a little bit later in this review. But I love this kind of, they're both playing each other to get what they want in this type of relationship. So speaking of the TVA here, we see them on the field, man. We see what they're capable of as we see Loki working his magic, doing his trickery, trying to fool them. And some of the group is like, oh, maybe he's right. We shouldn't step out of the tent. But Mobius is like, I've studied you, Loki. I know that you're lying. You're just trying to trick us, as he calls them out again. This episode to me is so pivotal for their relationship, because you're seeing this structured person, this detective in Mobius, having his guidelines, sticking it into the script, working with this person who plays off the script. And I think we're going to see those roles reverse as the season goes on. I think we're going to see maybe Loki playing more by the rules and Mobius maybe going outside the rules by the end of the show. That's my theory moving forward, that we're going to see the role reversal between those two characters. But speaking of Mobius, he has a conversation with Renslayer as he's explaining his methods of how he's working Loki, how he's getting Loki to help them find this variant version of Loki, but also learning Loki, because as we learned in the episode, there are various Lokis that cause a lot of chaos in the timeline. So if you can learn about how a Loki behaves, you can easily find them in the future. So again, I love the alternative motives that Mobius has. But going into this scene here, I think it's important to keep in mind, as Renslayer tells Mobius, we need to figure this out. This is on you. We need to crack this case, because the Timekeepers are keeping a close eye on the situation, which makes me start to think, what are the Timekeepers really up to? Now, we know they want to make sure that they can keep the sacred timeline intact, and we know the various versions of Loki causes chaos, but I don't know, man. I'm going to take a swing in the dark here. I think that as the MCU has given us, like showing us the good version of the Skrulls versus traditionally the Skrulls are evil, I think that the TVA looking up to Timekeepers for the go-to, be-all, know everything, I think that there might be some corruption going on in Timekeepers. Maybe a Kang the Conqueror in the mix, or maybe their own alternative motives. But I think the Timekeepers are not as good as they're making them out to be. And we'll talk about a scene that Mobius has with Loki a little bit later in regards to his belief system. But I don't know if we can trust the Timekeepers, because again, they're keeping a close eye to the situation, knowing that the Timekeepers have so many more bigger things to worry about, right? The Infinity Stones last week meant nothing to them, right? So I think that we should keep an eye on what the Timekeepers are and who they are potentially. And again, another thing that I want to point out about this scene, as Mobius is kind of like jealous about Renslayer talking about she has her other field agents that she has good relationships with. As I mentioned last week, in the comic books, Renslayer and Kang the Conqueror, aka Nathaniel Reeds, have a really close relationship. So I wonder if the MCU version of Kang, Nathaniel before he becomes Kang, if he's like working for the TVA, if him and Renslayer have a relationship, if he's just like a pseudo version of Mobius and he's on the field and obviously something goes wrong, he becomes infatuated with time as he does in the comics. So I wonder if they have already planted the seeds that her other close relationship and her other field agent is Nathaniel Reeds, aka Kang the Conqueror. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But moving forward, we see Mobius telling Loki, this is your last chance. Chop with all your games. Let's get our head in the game and let's figure this out and capture this Loki. He vows to be true to himself and not, backstab Mobius and the TVA. But speaking of Loki, going back to him, he learns about more of what happens in his future and what he created in the and trying to learn more about the TVA and learn about the creation of time. But the lady doesn't give him any of that information, but instead he gets some files and finds out about Ragnarok, which again ties back to last week's character development. He sees this path of destruction that he's created, and he sees that his where he comes from, his home, Asgard, has been destroyed. So again, this puts more perspective in Loki in regards to maybe I need to change. Maybe I need to go a different path. And again, him thinking that he's going to meet the timekeepers, he's thinking that he can maybe alter his future, being choked out and killed by Thanos. So I love that moment. But in the mix of him discovering all that, he gets a hunch on maybe where they can find this other version of Loki, as they talk about this chaotic alterations, as Loki believes that this version of Loki is hiding within different apocalypses and just using those areas to kind of camp out to plan their next step move. And as he has this clumsy metaphor using the food and the salt and all that, again, the comedy in the show has really worked. It's not too over the top. It's still kind of grounded in reality within this reality, but I love the comedy beats here. But he wants to test his theory, which leads us to 79 AD in Italy, Pompeii, which we see, obviously we know what happens to Pompeii. Loki's theory does come true. We see him causing a scene and letting all the goats out, and as he's doing that, Mobius is looking at his kind of detector to determine if there's a variation, if there's someone that doesn't belong in this timeline, if it's detected on his radar, and nothing comes up. So Loki's theory is true that this Lady Loki is hiding it in different spots before like natural disasters are meant to happen. Things that are, again, we know in episode 1, this is predetermination. There's no free will. So just for the fact that you're in that timeline, it doesn't affect what's going on. So that's why they're not able to catch this version of Loki. Again, I love the time travel and the predetermination and all that stuff that they go over, the natural disasters and stuff. It's really great. It's right up my alley when it comes to sci-fi. So next here we have a really great conversation. Speaking of sci-fi, the believe it or not type of thing, right? The belief system between these two polar opposite characters. We see Mobius talking about his belief system in the TVA, in the timekeepers, in the time variance association or the authority, and how he believes in all this. And it might sound crazy to a character like Loki or anyone else that's not familiar with them, right? This is our first time being introduced to this timeline, this timekeepers, and it sounds a little wild. And I love how Mobius turns it back on Loki. Well, you come from Asgard, and there's gods, and there's Odin, and there's Thor, and all that kind of mythology. So I love that conversation between two. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier. I think Mobius is going to have that change of heart where once he maybe finds out this alternative motives of the timekeepers, that he's going to maybe be more of a free agent, be more of a, not a chaotic character like Loki, but he might play outside of the rules, and he might maybe leave a TVA by the end of the season. Who knows what that comes with. But again, I just love that conversation regarding like their belief systems between those two characters. But let's go into how they cracked the case. It is the gum that we got last week from Kablooie, I believe is the name of the gum, as Loki refers to Mobius is calling Loki a scared child. And he goes back to the child that he met in that church last week, given the gift by the devil. We know it's not Mephisto at this point, that it is essentially Loki, Lady Loki with the horns there, but they come into the idea that they kind of stumble upon it. They believe that this version of Loki has been hiding out in Haven Hills, Alabama, which is a place that will have a apocalyptic incident happen, a natural disaster, and that there's a bunch of food there, and that makes sense that they will go there to get the supplies, get that particular gum that was gifted to that kid, centuries than when it should have been in. So that brings us into Mobius getting the okay by Renslayer to go on with this mission and bring the team in to get support. And now we get the mind-blowing finale. As we kind of wrap up the episode, we go to Roxxcart. It's a superstore that is in the middle of a Class 10 apocalypse in 2050. And this is where the action happens in the episode. And we see Loki saying, "Trust me," as he's telling, at this point we have Hunter, B-15, keep her tabs on Loki, and Mobius is going to go with the rest of the team, which wasn't a good idea because at this point, Loki somewhat officially meets this version of Loki, because we see that they're masking themselves more of the powers and the manipulative and the capabilities of switching your appearance, as Loki does with his powers, is going through these different bodies, and he ultimately goes into Hunter B-15 body and takes over her, and they have this conversation, as well as, while we're in the middle of all this, Mobius and his team comes across C-20, whose mind has been warped, but she accidentally she spilled the beans on where she can find, or Loki can find, the timekeepers. I think Lady Loki, is doing something for the good versus something in the bad, because I think, again, the timekeepers are doing something bad, I believe. That's my big thing, but we'll see what comes with all that. But in the middle of that, we see Loki, they're fighting each other with all these different appliances and all that different stuff, and Loki's just like, just show me yourself, reveal yourself. They ultimately do, and it is revealed to be Lady Loki, played by Sophia Di Martino. You're not too familiar with their work, but Marvel is great at picking out no-name actors and making them celebrities and making them superstars, a la Chris Hemsworth, a la, even Chris Evans revitalizing his career, Robert Downey Jr., so on and so forth. They're known for making these new actors, or newer to the larger audience, a household name. So I'm excited to see what Sophia brings to the table as Lady Loki. Let's get to it, guys. She has those time reset bombs. She puts it all over the cart, and the bombs drop, and we see that there's chaos, there's madness in the multiverse as the TVA sees this go down. I think this is the ramifications and sets the stage for Spider-Man No Way Home, as well as Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. I think what Lady Loki did is going to bring in different timelines. We get a character like, as soon as, Doc Ock dies in Doctor Strange 2, that bomb goes off and he goes into our timeline, Electro and all this stuff for Spider-Man, and of course, whatever we want to get in Doctor Strange 2. I think this show is huge. I think what we saw in this episode will set the stage for Phase 4 in the Multiverse of Madness. That's my thought. I love it. And again, I think Lady Loki, who we'll learn more about her in the weeks ahead, I think there's a reason why they did that. And who knows how that could affect our timeline, the sacred timeline, and how that could bring in another person that's obsessed with time, that is Kane the Conqueror, who might be that field agent that has Renslayer's eyes. So this episode was great, so fantastic. The ramifications, the theories that we can talk about of what that ending means. Of course, again, the timekeepers and their alternative motive, Mobius and his belief system, and so much more. And again, Loki betraying them. He walked in that portal with Lady Loki, and I think we're gonna get a little bit of understanding of why she did what she did. She doesn't even like to go by the name of Loki, so I hope to learn more about that character next week, played by this new actress, and I think she's gonna knock it out of the park. So I love this episode. I have so much fun watching. I can't wait to rewatch it. Can't wait to do our live show that we do every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Time. We're going to have our special guest, Brandon from Just My Opinion. Keep an eye out for that live stream on Thursday, tomorrow, as I'm pre-recording this, so the following day. So again, guys, if you stick around to the end of this review, I appreciate it. Make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your comments below. What is your thoughts, your theories, your predictions for the weeks ahead, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching this review. Hope you all are staying safe, and we'll see you in the next video.